Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending from where in this world you're joining us today. Welcome to today's session. My name is Nina Bado. I'm the ecosystem manager for the British Columbia Water Cluster here at Foresight. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's exchange between Vancouver and the Netherlands on cluster development in water tech. And we're very excited that we can partner on this occasion with Invest Vancouver, the Dutch consulate here in Vancouver, and the Dutch Water Alliance. And this event is also taking place in partnership with Climate Connections. But before we get started, I would like to acknowledge with gratitude and respect that the lands on which Foresight operates are the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And with that, I would like to introduce today's agenda. It is as follows. We will have first a few welcome remarks from our partners, and then we will dive right into the Dutch panel. We'll have 3 presentations. And then in the second part, we'll have the Canadian panel with 4 panelists from BC. And we encourage you to ask questions, and please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to address a few of them during the conversation. And then we'll wrap it up around 9:30. And with that, I would like to pass the word on to our CEO, Jeanette Jackson. Jeanette, the floor is yours.
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, a beautiful day before a long weekend, and very excited to welcome you to this conversation today. I think a lot of us, as we look at the weather patterns that we've been facing over the last several months and years, that climate and water innovation are critical to success in making sure we have a livable planet moving forward. Here at Foresight, we have a pretty ambitious, big, hairy, audacious goal, and that is that Canada be the first G7 country to reach net zero, intentionally provocative in bringing stakeholders together to pool resources, have conversations, launch projects and initiatives that can really scale innovation and adoption of those solutions here in Canada and abroad. And that also means the opportunity to attract the right innovation to Canada so that we can help decarbonize industry and municipalities as quickly as possible. Our approach is very much a whole of ecosystem approach. We like to make sure that the innovation community is supported by industry, investors, government, and of course, academia, which is part of our Climate Connections component of the session today. Climate Connections is how we present different challenges and opportunities to our academic institution partners so that the students and the researchers are thinking about those problems when they're thinking about the next generation of careers, businesses, etc. So next slide. In terms of our BC Net Zero Innovation Network, this is a very important initiative or project, we call it, that was launched formally in February, but behind the scenes over the prior years, we've been doing some pretty grassroots work in engaging stakeholders across 4 sectors. Water being one of the primary sectors, followed by mining, forestry, and transportation, which will be announced later this month. It is Transportation Month here in British Columbia. And really the purpose of the Innovation Network, again, is to build on pooling resources and getting stakeholders within different communities by sector and by region to focus on specific projects that will help decarbonize those sectors. And what we're doing with each of the clusters is we'll have a bit of a North Star, and those will be announced over the next little bit as well. And I'm just so honored that Alan Shapiro and Nina, they're leading all of our water initiatives here under the BC Net Zero Innovation Network, brings so much expertise and commitment to water innovation here in the region. Next slide. Of course, a lot of Foresight's programs and initiatives are only made possible through incredible partnerships, which you're going to meet some today, and of course with the support and collaboration with Pacific Economic Development Canada, which I always shorten as PacificCan, but we are a big acronym country, so we'll get this one right. And of course, the province has been incredibly supportive as well. So this is a really multi-level government, industry, academia, an investor engagement process and program. So we're really delighted that you're all seeing this today. Next slide. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to the incredible Leila, one of our partners in many initiatives, but from Invest Vancouver. And Leila will pass it over to you. Thank you so much for joining this morning and have a great session.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your Friday to be with us here today. My name is Leila Yuzikanin. I'm Vice President of Data Research and Policy at Invest Vancouver. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the Vancouver-Netherlands Exchange on Water Tech Cluster Building. Last night, some of us here in Vancouver had the pleasure of attending a pitch event where a group of very impressive climate-focused water tech ventures presented their technologies. Today, our focus is to learn from the Dutch experience of building their water tech cluster in Leeuwarden, to discuss our own context here in British Columbia, and to examine ways to further advance our water tech sector. But before we launch into our panel discussions, I'd like to share a bit more about Invest Vancouver and our keen interest in water tech. Invest Vancouver is the region's economic development leadership service, committed to fostering a dynamic and resilient economy that generates prosperity for all, effectively leveraging our existing and emerging competitive advantages. Our work is focused on forward-thinking economic policies and actions that position our region for success in this rapidly evolving global economy. We always start with the premise that in order to succeed, the region needs to play to its strengths. And for the Metro Vancouver region, one of those strengths is our clean tech expertise. Within clean tech, we have a large number of water tech firms working on solutions to diverse and intensifying water-related risks. So from an economic development perspective, we were interested in gaining a better understanding of our water tech sector and finding ways to strengthen it. Back in 2021, in partnership with Foresight Canada, we put together the idea of the Water Tech Cluster Initiative. And this initiative consisted of 3 phases. Conducting research to better understand the region's water tech capabilities and to identify gaps, to strengthen the sector through acceleration activities, and fostering the development of the entire water tech cluster and its ecosystem. And this last part is why we gathered here today. A key finding of our research was that our water tech sector is highly diverse with many essential components, but in need of support to coalesce as a cluster. So the first recommendation in our water tech report is to support clustering. And of course, we pointed to the leading jurisdictions for inspiration in this effort, Leeuwarden's Water Campus in the Netherlands. That's why I'm so thrilled that we have been able to set up this exchange event today and move forward with the recommendations of our report. I want to extend my sincere thanks to Foresight Canada for being such excellent partners throughout this process. Of course, thank you to all the speakers participating in today's event and for your contribution to advancing our water tech clusters. Big thank to the Dutch Consulate in Vancouver for ongoing support for water innovation in the Metro Vancouver region. I will leave you with the QR code on the slide that links to Invest Vancouver Water Tech Report, where you can find more information about our water tech companies, the ecosystem, and our recommendations for ways to further support this valuable sector. With that, I will pass it over to the Consul General for the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Sebastian Messerschmidt, for his welcoming remarks.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, everybody. It's very good to see you. Very good day for me because what's happening today hits the core of what we are about. The old style diplomatic way of being is that you would take the Dutch culture and the Dutch innovation and the Dutch business and try to bring it abroad and sell products and therefore gain your own income with it. These days, with these current challenges, which are international and global, we understand very well that we need a global approach to combat all these challenges. And it's in that way of thinking that we are now geared towards building ecosystems, shared ecosystems, in where innovation goes back and forth between especially partners that are allies, partners that are close to you. And Canada and the Netherlands, although maybe geographically pretty far apart, in values, in the way we think, in the way we want to innovate, are very close. And I must say also personally, in all of my positions for foreign affairs, I've always worked very closely with the Canadians because we do share that approach towards how do we want to attack the global challenges together and contribute to the solutions. So it's good to see that when business and R&D and innovators come together and create beautiful things, and you have those in two countries and they actually connect, and we can be part of that and contribute that and facilitate that. That's really the core of what we want to see. So it's a proud day for me today to see you together in water tech, one of the areas where the Dutch like to brag about our knowledge, but we're also always willing and eager to learn from experience elsewhere. So the outcome for today, if it brings new curiosity, more contacts, new conferences, maybe flying back and forth or zooming back and forth to understand each other's challenges and contribute to it, then my work is done, and I can see how I contribute further down in the progress. Do know that this is also part of a bigger framework. We have a strategic dialogue between Canada and the Netherlands. Our Prime Minister Rutte will be visiting probably this year still, maybe next year, your Premier, Prime Minister Trudeau, and where science and technology and innovation and also water innovation is part of the whole package, where we are looking at how can we get closer, how can we contribute. And also between British Columbia and the Netherlands, there's a lot of contacts going on in innovation. We just had an agriculture technology innovation mission not long ago, and you are having this meeting today, also part of a long-standing relationship that is building and building. And of course, also on the more local level, we are getting closer to Invest Vancouver. So we're also looking forward to do even more business with you. And I wish you lots of success today. Please don't forget to knock on our door. You can also knock on the door of the Canadian Embassy in The Hague, because we cooperate very closely in that same ecosystem thinking. Don't be a stranger. You know where to find us. Maarten and Auden is our water expert, our water facilitator here at the consulate, and always willing to facilitate and help. With that, I would like to pass on the mic, if you like, to Alan Shapiro.
Thank you so much. I have the privilege of wrapping up our introductions, which I'm sure everyone will be thrilled about, to move into our Dutch panel and hear a little bit more about the Dutch water cluster. I want to share right before we do a couple of concrete pieces of work that we've been doing in partnership with the Netherlands over the past year. I know Hein Molenkamp was our first Dutch speaker, always gets excited when we chat about concrete collaboration opportunities. And so for us, with our BC Net Zero Innovation Network, it's really been about starting to coalesce stakeholders in this region, but also looking to see what those international partnerships look like, including Vancouver and the Netherlands. So our water cluster that we've been working to develop over the past few months really aims to stitch together the more than 100 water and ocean tech companies based in this province, and then the much broader range of stakeholders here, from municipalities and utilities to engineering consulting firms and all of the service providers in the ecosystem. We've got 3 focus areas: water and climate, circular water, and smart water. And within each of those, we've already had opportunities to work on things like roundtable events, to look at launching potential challenges to support specific ventures. We can jump to the next slide. We've already had an opportunity to send some of those ventures abroad. And so last fall, we attended the European Water Technology Week at the Leeuwarden Water Cluster as our first sort of opportunity to bring some of the ventures from Vancouver over and learn a little bit from that ecosystem and connect with potential clients there. We're hoping that we'll have a similar exchange next year with the Blue Tech Forum in Vancouver and the Globe Forum in Vancouver. And then this fall, we've got Aquatech Amsterdam, which is another big event in the Netherlands that we know that many of our ventures, both in Vancouver and in Canada, are excited to attend. So there's a lot of concrete crosstalk happening already, not just at this cluster level, but specifically at that startup and SME level. We've also got all sorts of projects in development, including a water monitoring innovation challenge that we hope to launch this fall, collaboration with the BC Working for Watersheds Coalition, and sector engagement across a number of different sector verticals in the province that have water-related challenges, including utilities, bioeconomy, mining, and food and beverage. So with that, I'm thrilled to be able to introduce our Dutch panel. The way we're going to structure this panel is opening remarks from 3 of our Dutch panelists to speak a little bit to their organization's mandate and also how they're interwoven within our Dutch cluster. So the premise is, let's learn a little bit about the Dutch cluster, and we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. So introducing our first speaker, Hein Molenkamp, the director of the Water Alliance in the Netherlands. Hein, over to you.
Super, Alan, thank you. And well, it was our honor and pleasure, of course, to cooperate in this webinar. And we talked already a lot about it when we were in Vancouver. Well, what was it, about 2 months ago, when there was actually also the Dutch Agri mission to Vancouver. So what our aim here is in this panel is to have a few panelists from the Netherlands side who explain a little bit more about the clustering around Water Campus in Leeuwarden. And I will introduce the campus as a picture and give you a little bit of bird's eye view on it as well. And at the same time also talk a little bit about water lines. I hope I can, yes, this is the first picture what I want to take you with. The Netherlands is very well known from its water knowledge. And of course, most of the people know the Netherlands from its dikes and building capacities around harbors. And that is what we call in the Netherlands Delta technology. And if we look to the Water Campus innovation ecosystem in Leeuwarden, we are totally focused on water quality issues. So what we say water technology. So we build a complete system around water technology from initial ID up to upscaling technology and bring it to the market. And the next presentation I will have here in a very short movie will show a little bit more on that, and happy to come back to you in questions later, of course. What is important, of course, is that it is not only done from either Leeuwarden or the Netherlands. It's all about global cooperation if you want to really build out on clusters. And this is also why it's so important that we, together with talk about how to cooperate in clustering. The Netherlands calls itself a European Water Technology Hub from out of Water Campus Leeuwarden, and we have connections, in fact, all over the globe, of which one of this connection is to Canada. Already for many years, I've been visiting Canada with Water Alliance, and since a couple of years, we have built up this relation with Foresight as well. Probably you know with Foresight and Water Alliance both are part of ICN, International Clean Tech Network, and we are also building out around water technology collaboration. Important to understand for those who are in this webinar that water technology is really enabling technology for many, many sectors. So it's not only about water sector, if you look to drinking water applications or municipal wastewater treatment, which is obvious, but water technology plays a very important role in fact, almost all sectors you can think of. Chemistry, agriculture, food, energy, and it is a very important one if you talk about circular economy and climate change. Then water is most often in the heart of the solutions. And I'll come back on that. So this next slide here is explaining you a little bit more about the ecosystem we have in the Netherlands around Water Campus. And here, this picture shows you what we are building. It starts at an initial ID, and if there is somebody with an ID, you have to really research a lot on it to prove these IDs, and to also scale up the IDs before you can really start with a technology going to the market. And what you see here, all those circles are really built upon our Water Campus system. There is physically a lot of those circles active, and I'll explain a little bit more. And later in the panel, you will hear a little bit more on Wetsus, which is in fact on the early stage scientific side of this ecosystem. What you see in the right upper corner, from ID to research. And Inez will explain a bit more on the Wetsus side of the Water Campus. So I'll explain a bit more on the rest of the ecosystem. To give you an impression, and a very short movie will explain a lot about what we do on acceleration of technology to the market. So in a 2 minute, you will see here what is going on at Water Campus. And see it starting. Okay, it's not starting. no problem. The movie is also to be seen at our website. So for those who didn't see it before, please visit our website and there is this short movie. I'll continue with the explanation in the next slide, so you will get a view anyhow. So you see here a simple schedule of what is Water Campus. Water Campus itself is not an entity, it's just the name of our ecosystem. The ecosystem is built up out of several organizations, mostly non-profit organizations, and it starts on the left side at the science, where Wetsus takes the scientific role at Water Campus. You will hear a bit more from Inez in a later presentation. And there in the middle, you see applied research, which is carried out by the Center of Expertise of Water Technology. That is in fact the part where the developed ideas out of the research, out of the scientific research, will be taken a bit further to bring it more to practical scale, where individual companies, for instance, can have pilot runs. And at the end of the circle, where the technology is finished to go to the market, or at least have the first initial launching customers there, Waterlines plays the major role to connect the business to the whole system. And of course, acceleration needs a strong ecosystem, not only those organizations I mentioned, but it is very important that we work together with other organizations, of course, to create the whole ecosystem, not only within the region of the province of Friesland where we are active, but also from the Netherlands wide organizations, and of course the international connections we have. If you see here the right upper corner, there's a little bit more on this circle. So I'm now already at the Water Application Center. The Water Application Center is a physical laboratory at the Water Campus facilities where applied research can be carried out together with companies, but also important is that here the students are educated in water technology in many levels. So this physical laboratory is very important for the education, but on the other hand, individual companies can rent a space at this laboratory for them to carry out pilots. And the interesting thing here is that they can easily attach students to their pilot research, and in such a way they become quite good connected to students which might end up as an employee in their company later. And this is a very important part of Water Campus, that we try to connect education with companies. And here at the Water Application Center, this is really happening a lot. So in a later stage, this pilot may become out of the small laboratory circumstances, but needs to be scaled up, for instance, in a sea container type of pilot. It's a little bit depending on what type of technology you are developing, but a lot of those technology will have to be scaled up in a sea container type of size. And for that reason, we organize a lot of what we call demo sites or test facilities around our Water Campus. For instance, at the drinking water facilities or wastewater facilities, but also at a hospital and at a salt factory, where we can have all kinds of different technologies tested in real life situations. And this is in fact the last step before the technology is introduced to the end customers. From demo sites, we go up to launching customers. And if the company is already an entity, either a small startup entity, they can even use our offices at Water Campus to have their first start. And this picture shows the former church, the Johannes de Doper, we call it, where it's also the office of Waterlines itself. But at the moment, some 12 to 15 startup companies have their offices there. And from there, they are very close connected to all the research facilities offered at Water Campus. So we can rent them some space, but of course, more important, besides renting space, is that we can help them scaling up their technology. This is also the case for why, for instance, foreign companies who want to start business in Europe can have their first initial start here at Water Campus. At the moment, we have, for instance, a company from Australia just starting up here at Water Campus. And just last week, a company from the United States has started their first office in Europe here at Water Campus. And this picture shows a little bit about the companies who are just there at the moment at Water Campus having their offices. Okay, starting an office is not that very difficult, of course. It's more about the support where we can help them with, which makes the difference. So this is where Water Alliance comes in for those companies going to the market. We are the network organization for them who can help them either to connect to business in the Netherlands or abroad. So a lot of activities of Water Alliance are done internationally. So in this way, Water Alliance is a networking organization, have some 200 plus members, all from the Netherlands. And mainly those companies in the Netherlands are SME level of companies, so small and medium-sized entities. And because we are in this ecosystem at Water Campus, quite a large number of our members are also startups or scale-ups. So let's say companies which not even exist 5 or 6 years ago. And that's interesting, of course, because there is a lot of innovation in those companies, and the interaction between those startups and the existing SME field is very important. It also boosts the collaboration between companies. Well, this is just a short picture of all those members. You can find them back on our website, of course. We are happy to discuss further on that. The way we are organized at Water Alliance internally is that we work with expert groups. So those are groups in which companies who work in the field, let's say for cooling water or industrial water or swimming pools or circular water, all team up together to have a regular meeting with each other and see how they can team up to, for instance, to influence regulations, which is a very important thing, of course, for introducing a lot of new innovations to the market. Often regulation is blocking sometimes their way to the market. So we also put a lot of effort in having influence on those regulation side and political side. Not only in the Netherlands, but that's why we're also active in quite a lot of international groups together to pave the way for those innovations to the market. An example of where Water Alliance is active in is the Global Water Tech Hub Alliance, which is an alliance of some 6 or 7 clusters from all over the world, which we have initiated actually in 2018 at a congress in Leeuwarden, where several organizations like PUB Singapore and Makarot Israel and, for instance, Water Council from the United States teamed up with us and try to accelerate innovations together. And one of the next examples is together with Foresight. We are in an international clean tech network, which mainly is having organizations in this network within the clean tech sector. But Water Alliance is also a member of this ICN network, and we are focusing solely upon water tech solutions. But of course, if there is any market demands within clean tech, often you see that water tech can play a major role in that solution. So for us, it's a very helpful network, and we already see working together with Foresight that we find new solutions, and that's where it's all about in those cluster collaboration. Now I hope to move one further, but it's blocked at my side. Yeah, well, this is just one of the last slides in my presentation before we continue with Wetsus. This is an example of a European project which Waterlines runs with several other clusters from Europe, but is focused on the Northern American market. And this is also a project where we worked a lot with Alan and Foresight to find mutual potential customers. I think this is really helpful for both of our clusters, which is supported by some subsidies from the European market to help at least smaller SMEs to foreign markets. So this is just one example of the projects we run. Next slide. I think that's my last slide. So it was just a very short introduction on Waterlines and at Water Campus, and the next two speakers will continue and say some more about the Water Campus from Wetsus side and the provincial side from province of Friesland. Thank you for your attention, and let's discuss some further with any questions from your side. Thank you.
Thank you, Hein. Really fascinating to get that behind the scenes look at the Water Campus, and truly fascinating for us to have a chance to tour that last fall and really to see how all the puzzle pieces fit together. For anyone in the audience, I'm going to ask, feel free to throw your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them after we've heard from our 3 Dutch speakers. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Inez Dinkla, Scientific Program Manager from Wetsus, to dive a little bit deeper into this research piece of Water Campus. Inez, go ahead. And you're still muted, Inez.
I will take control again, Inez, don't worry.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute while being in
No.
the other screen.
No problem.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ellen. Thank you all very much for giving us the opportunity to present Wetsus at this meeting. It's my first introduction to this cooperation with Canada, and happy to contribute. So my name is Inez Dinkla, and I work as a scientific program manager at Wetsus. And Hein already nicely explained that we are part of the Water Campus, and that we focus mainly on the scientific research part of that ecosystem. I hope I can move to the next slide. Yeah. So Hein already nicely showed the church that the Water Campus Water Alliance hosts, and in the top here you see a picture of the Wetsus building. So that's normally our residence, and a very nice building on the same site. Now, the aim of Wetsus is to facilitate innovative water technologies that are both sustainable and fair. And we try to do this by really bridging the demands of companies with the ideas and scientific insights that academia can offer. And those two parts, as you probably also are aware of, are not always finding each other easily. They sometimes need kind of interpreters in between to bring the two together. And that's what we try to do. Now, we also believe that for really making impact on developing water technology, that we need to aim for really scientific excellence. And we also believe that it's good to build a long-term relationship with the companies that we work with. So that for us made the choice that we want to work with PhD projects, so that lasts for 4 years. And with those 4-year projects in our multidisciplinary laboratories that you see some pictures of, we are really able to go to this excellent level and also have a good binding and transfer of that knowledge to the companies. So you can see it's very light and airy building, so it's really nice to work there. So if you have the chance to visit us, please do. Now, I think what it makes it very interesting also for the companies to join is that we have quite a good multiplier of the money that they invest in doing this research. So typically of the products that we run, 55% is funded by European, national and regional governments. So we're very grateful for having that support. 25% is then contributed by the companies that in the form of memberships to certain research themes, and 20% is contributed by universities in the form of supervision and sometimes facilities that they can offer that we don't have. Now we have over 100 member companies, and this is not to brag about the number, but to show that we have both very high multinational companies that are a member of Wetsus, as well as that we have also small, medium enterprises and really startup. And I think this breadth of companies that are joined to the Wetsus program makes it possible to sometimes move fast, you know, with small startups, whilst on the other side also be able to create more impact with larger companies at the same time. And besides that, for many of the challenges that we now face in products, we cannot depend on one discipline to solve the challenges. We need a lot of them. We need different combinations of disciplines. Now, if we would have all these disciplines and we needed to hire them at Wetsus, that would be very costly. But what we do is we connect to over 50 professors from many different universities inside the Netherlands, but also outside the Netherlands, that bring in the best knowledge in this field. And it also gives them the opportunity to cooperate with others that they may also normally not so easily connect to. Then a little bit about the scope of the Wetsus research, because it's all about water technology. But of course, within that, we also need some focus. So we focus on 4 pillars that we call sustainable water, healthy environment, drought resilience, and recovered resources. And the choices for these pillars are based on, let's say, the planetary boundary model that shows that for certain needs, we already exceed the capacity of the Earth or nearly exceed them. And for the issues where we do, we feel that these pillars are the right ones to try and get to more sustainable technologies. So sustainable water really focuses on the development of a natural-based chemical-free water technology treatments for purification, for instance. Healthy environment focuses really on the quality of water, so ways to ensure and measure those. And drought resilience, we there try to provide solutions for capturing and keeping, let's say, the green water, so the water related to the rain cycle in soils and water systems. And in the recovered resources, we try to retrieve, for instance, nutrients and products from wastewater that we can reuse. Now, having over 60 PhDs on different research also requires some structuring. So within the pillars, we have different research teams structured. You can see those by the different circles. So have a look on our website if you're interested in a specific topic. You can find much more. But the idea within all these research teams is that they're forming an IP cluster. And within the IP cluster, we try to combine, let's say, the knowledge institutes, so the bringers of the knowledge, with private and public end users. So they are the ones who really want to use and apply solutions, and also the tech companies that can develop these solutions and market them. And by having these IP clusters, companies can veto any new members to the team to keep their position, but also even if you're big or small company, you have equal voice in the choices for the next products to run in this team. And by the IP, you have a secure way to join by the IP construction. Now, these research teams, they convene 3 times a year at Wetsus. And besides that, we also organize annual internal and external congress and workshops. And so we create also a place where companies can network, both in their own research corporation as well as with the other companies that are that joined Wetsus. Now, finally, I like to introduce one project to illustrate a bit how this can work. And this is the project and research team where we make biopolymers from organic wastewater. So really production of bioplastics. And that starts out with that we know that bacteria in wastewater can build up high concentrations of polymers, biopolymers in their cells. And through studies on optimization, upscaling, even throughout extraction of the product, we worked on that together with the companies and end users. And I think this is a particularly nice example, as we are always looking for plastics that are also fully biodegradable. And this is an example that is. And in this research team, we have as a knowledge partner, University of Delft. But also we hired an expert that worked for years in this field, Ellen Worker, to complement that knowledge. And we have a public end user, that's STOA, that's the Knowledge Institute of Water Boards. And they are, of course, very interested in better use of their wastewater and their waste sludge. As a private end user, there's Unilever, they would like to use the plastics. And there's a water tech company that actually built also on this research, was developed PAC biomaterials, and they really want to develop and sell the product. Then to summarize a bit what the Wetsus output has up to now resulted in, and I'm happy to say that we are now, we reached the age of 20 years, and we can now say that we have, in the meantime, achieved 99 patents, of which 43 were transferred to companies. So that shows that we have really output that the companies are looking for. Hein already explained that we have a very good system to allow for the development of spin-off companies to root in the water campus. But also what's very important, I think, is that we have up to now raised 142 doctors that are now, so we don't only have scientists that are finished, but also we have new water technology experts that really can help the further growth of water technology in and outside the Netherlands. And yeah, Hein already also mentioned that we have possibilities for pilot scales to validate new technologies. So I think that concludes my contribution, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Inez. Really fascinating to dive into that. I'll ask again if there's any questions. Feel free to throw them into the Q&A, and we'll get to them if time allows. But for the last Dutch perspective, we'd love to invite Roelof Jansma, Senior Policy Analyst from the province of Friesland.
I'm laughing a bit because of the picture that you found for me on the internet. Not quite a recent picture, I can tell you, but it is me. I am Roelof. I'm Roelof Jansma. I work as a policy advisor at the province of Friesland. Friesland is one of the 12 provinces of the Netherlands. It has about 650,000 inhabitants, so quite a bit smaller than the greater Vancouver area and British Columbia. It's situated in the northern part of the Netherlands, and it's famous for its water. It's a water province. We have a lot of lakes and a lot of canals, and we are a popular location for water tourism. Oh, that's the wrong. Yes, that's it. So Hein and Inez already told a lot about the Water Campus and Wetsus, and I'm gonna tell you something in short about the cluster building experience in Friesland by trying to answer these 3 questions. So the first question is, why did we decide to host a water cluster in our region? Well, as I said before, we are a water province. We have a lot of canals and lakes, but Friesland also has a lot of key players in the private and public water sector. The real cluster building started in the 1990s. Yes, in the 1990s. The Dutch government researched the water sector and concluded that there was international potential in this sector in the Netherlands and especially in the province of Friesland. And this has led to the founding of the Frisian Water Alliance in 1999. The province was one of the founding fathers of this alliance. At the time, there was a great public and private desire to further develop the water sector and especially its knowledge base, because Friesland itself doesn't have a university. How did we coordinate the different stakeholders? Well, as I said before, the Frisian Water Alliance was founded in 1999. It's an alliance of companies, knowledge institutes, and Frisian governments. And the first goals that were set out in 2000 were continuity in the water technology and knowledge development in Friesland. The second goal was a big impulse on the export of water technology companies. The third goal was 10 sustainable, innovative water technology projects in 5 years. And this last goal was tackling the environmental issues in the Frisian water chain. But it all really started by building the strong knowledge base in 2003 by creating Wetsus. That was a key to the water technology development. Through the years, our role has shifted from taking initiative more to funding and lobbying for funding. A big part of the funding, as Inez already also showed, comes nowadays from the national government and the European Union. And we coordinated, and also we had a long-term vision, because as this overview shows, from the founding of the Water Alliance until the Water Campus as it is now, it took over 20 years to come there. So that's a really long-term vision you have to create such a water technology sector. Then my last slide. How has the cluster building experience been for us? I work only 3 years for the province, so for me it was a great ride, but for the province as a whole, it was a ride of 25 years, and it still continues. First of all, we are very proud that we have an international top cluster on water technology in our province. It brings high-level employment for people that otherwise probably would have left our province, and it also attracts people from elsewhere. And on top of that, the water topic has become even more relevant than 20 years ago. We are working on a large and very relevant societal challenge. Also, a big success factor is that the cluster was built on distinctive knowledge and that's present in the province, and that it was in a specific niche market with stakeholders that are open to working together. We have also other examples in our province of less successful cluster building experiences. I can tell you that. And maybe the final success factor is the long-term financial commitment of all parties. The province has co-funded the Water Campus parties from the beginning, and we have the intention to do so at least until 2030. So that was a short overview of our cluster building experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roelof, and really interesting to see all of those pictures coming together. We're running slightly behind schedule, so I'm going to ask one question to our Dutch panelists and hand it over to our Canadian panel. I see a question from Martin in the chat about how Water Alliance was started, and was it hard to gain traction among government and business? I'm going to broaden this for both Inez and for Hein, in terms of thinking back to the early days of Wetsus and the early days of Water Alliance, gaining traction. What supported that, and what were your challenges?
Okay. Well, let's start from my side. Water Alliance was started around 2009. And then you must see that Wetsus was already there for about 7 or 8 years. So, but the focus of Wetsus is in the early stage innovation, so lower TRL levels. And there was really a need for an organization which fits more to the market side, and that is where Water Alliance came in. So, and very important, of course, is the cooperation between governments, knowledge institutes, and businesses. So, in fact, we see ourselves as a sort of a translator, because often I see that the languages spoken between those three major parts are sometimes very different. And so you can simply see Water Alliance as well as a sort of a connector and translator of those market parties. So government is very important, like the province of Friesland, because often not only for a subsidy side, but they can also play a major role as a launching customer, for instance. So it takes too little time to explain that, but we have several projects where the local government plays that role of a launching customer to help settle down early product stages at applications within the government. Just short on that.
Thank you so much, Hein. And Inez, your perspective sort of on Wetsus early days?
Yeah, so of course I had to ask, because that started before I worked at Wetsus. What I understood is that it started out with really sort of a regional vision of that. They wanted to invest in the region and to see in what way that could be having a lot of impact. And so from that regional perspective, they were looking for a niche in which the Netherlands is strong, which is water technology, which would fit Friesland, which is also in water technology. And then together with the input of several water tech companies in the province, these parties came together and they started out. But you have to see, they started out with 2 PhD students, so very small. This is not just like it is now. It was really built up in 20 years. So they started out with a small product, showing that this could work, building up reputation, attracting other companies, and by that it started to grow and grow and grow. So, but this regional involvement and really, finding a niche where you can excel, that's very important as a starting point, I think.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And very quickly, great question in the chat here. What advice do you have for those aiming to build successful clusters from that 20-year experience? Whoever wants to jump in on that.
Could you explain that one more time, because I didn't get it all?
Based on your experience, what insights, advice, or critical lessons learned could you share for those aiming to build successful clusters?
Yeah, okay. Well, of course, there is so many. From my side, I can also state that it is very important to, on one side, stay focused. So we stay focused on water quality type of issues. It's quite easy to want to do everything with water. So, but we look for water quality type of focus, but also try to start somewhere, but try to make it bigger than only the city of the region, for instance. So we are, of course, in Leeuwarden, which is in the province of Friesland. But as Water Alliance, we were only able to grow, to open up, not only for regional companies, but for companies from all over the Netherlands. And that is a stage-wise, we have grown in there. And I think it is very important that you stay close and collaboration, for instance, with the people from the province of Friesland, because they spend also a lot of money in growing our cluster, but they also embrace the vision that we do this together, and I think that's important. So stay close also with your stakeholders around you, and make the strategy together and not only from one of the stakeholders.
I agree with Hein that on this also on finding this niche and sticking to it and try to be really excellent in that field, and then find the regional support for exploiting that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to our Dutch speakers. This is a really fascinating glimpse behind the scenes on the water cluster, and I'm going to hand it over now to Gregory Freeman from Invest Vancouver to moderate our Canadian panel with some really fascinating regional perspectives here. Gregory, over to you.
All right, thank you, Alan, and thank you to everybody on the Dutch side for joining us this morning and sharing their experience. That's really a treat for us to be able to share in that experience as we're trying to stumble our way through creating a similar sector here. One of the things when we look at water, I got into water as my first introduction to that was I was working as an economist in Southern California, and water's a big deal there. Semi-arid desert, they bring a lot of water in from far away. And what I used to tell people in the water industry is that, that it's one of those things that just flies under the radar. When it's done right, it's taken for granted. Everybody participating in it, we're all excited about water. We understand its importance, but it's something where we have to go out of our way to explain to a broader audience and the general public why they should care about this. And even knowing this, coming in with this starting point, I was still taken aback and surprised by the extent of the water-related activity in our region, which was sort of like when Megan and I first started looking at this, that's what got us into it. And it was very fascinating to find that in our region, there's really two streams that are leading, that are pushing forward water and the water sector. And one is sort of a technological innovation. We've got a real strength in clean tech, and water tech is a subset of that. And then, of course, we've got our mining industry. Much of the mining is done outside of our region, but they're headquartered here. And a lot of the support for that is from folks here. And of course, there's a lot of water contamination issues to deal with. Now, given these existing strengths, it makes sense to us to investigate this sector as an economic development opportunity. Globally, there's growing and really an increasing demand to remove contaminants, particularly really hard to remove contaminants like microplastics and PFAS and similar out of drinking water. We need to be treating some of these waste streams as resources so we can recover resources from them. And there's a real need to improve efficiency of existing infrastructure through the use of data and sensors. And one of our presenting companies last night talked about how the physical infrastructure side of things hasn't really changed all that much, or has improved, pardon me, but rather it's the software side of things that hasn't. And so there's a real opportunity there to make more efficient use, make sure that things are working at their peak potential. And so when we look at our region, we see a variety of firms supporting innovation ecosystem and a nascent water sector. And so really our motivating impetus for this panel is that what could we do with a concerted effort and focus on building this sector using the Netherlands experience in Leeuwarden as a model. To investigate this, I'm joined by Lillian Zaremba. She's the program manager and collaborative innovations for liquid waste services. That's our wastewater utility here in Metro Vancouver. Shannon Bard is lead entrepreneur in residence at Entrepreneurship in UBC. Saad Dara is founder and CEO of Mangrove Lithium. And Dara, Saad, I just have to take a moment to say congratulations. I just saw that yesterday it was announced that Mangrove Lithium is one of the 2023 recipients of funding from the BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy. And David Suey is Director General of the Business Growth and Competitiveness at Pacific Economic Development Canada, or PacificCan. So with that, I'd love to move into the questions. And I think what we'll do is we'll throw it to Lillian first. Lillian, as the region's liquid waste utility, Metro Vancouver has got the potential to be a key partner for a water tech cluster. What can you tell us about some of the ways that Metro Vancouver is encouraging innovation, and what have been some of the major wins and successful collaborations to date?
Thanks, Gregory. So one key way that Metro Vancouver is encouraging innovation is through our Sustainability Innovation Fund. This fund supports projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, protect the environment, or improve resilience. And the Sustainability Innovation Fund, or SIF, I'll be calling it, it helps bridge the gap between applied research and commercialization, which is sometimes hard to fund. And we've allocated over $16 million so far. One of our most ambitious projects is the hydrothermal processing demonstration facility. HTP uses pressure and heat to convert biomass to biocrude, which can then be refined to low carbon transportation fuels. So taking climate action, but also could revolutionize solids management for us in wastewater treatment. And this demonstration will be the first pilot scale system in the world using sludge as a feedstock. But scaling up and integrating HDP into a wastewater treatment plant also offers opportunities for innovation. It's not a new technology, but yeah, integrating with wastewater offers these opportunities. So we've also sponsored a 5-year NSERC research program at UBC on resource recovery from the other byproducts of HTP, other than biocrude. So we've got graduate students investigating recovering phosphorus from the solid hydrochar, recovering ammonia from the aqueous byproduct. We plan on also offering these byproducts to other interested parties for R&D while it's operating. So we see other opportunities in the region. Some other research with UBC on genomics of microbes in our digesters led to Metro Vancouver patenting a new technology that enhances microbial activity to create more renewable natural gas. So again, our climate goals. We're planning to pilot the technology ourselves, and then we need to determine the pathway to commercialization. So this will likely involve a partnership or spinoff, since we're not exactly a startup, being a government entity. And I'll just mention one other SIF project that came about when a professor approached our sewer team and asked about their problems, and they talked about corrosion in sewers. So the UBC team proposed a project to develop a new coating to rehabilitate concrete sewers, and they received SIF funding. They field tested the coating, they're improving the sprayability, spraying placement using AI, and this will be important to commercialize the coating, so bringing it out of the university and into the real world. So just a couple examples of those SIF projects and collaborating with academia. Another way that we support innovation is through the ANASYS Research and Event Center. It offers access to live wastewater streams from the adjacent wastewater treatment plant. So there's primary effluent, secondary effluent, sludge, and centrate being piped into research bays that are available for lease to researchers, and there's a lab that they can all use. So researchers from academia and industry have been using this space for over 20 projects. So just a short list: testing membranes, aeration, phosphorus recovery, biosolids dewatering, detecting microplastics and contaminants, H2S mitigation, wireless sensors. So a real wide range of research happening there. And in the future, we plan to create more research and innovation space at our Iona Island wastewater treatment plant, which you see behind me here in this image. The plant's undergoing a major upgrade from primary to secondary treatment, and this presents an opportunity to really reimagine the treatment plant. So right now, it takes time and expense to connect pilots at any of our existing treatment plants, and we envision having spaces for innovation throughout the new Iona plant. So at key points in each process, to provide easy access for bringing in new technology pilots. So those sea containers that we saw in the Dutch presentations, where can we park those in the plant and hook up to our commodities? So we need innovation to address our climate goals, improve resilience, and in turn, collaborating can help grow that next generation of experts, drive entrepreneurship, and contribute to economic development in the region.
You sold yourself a little bit short when you said you're not a startup, but I think you are. One of the things that really struck me about the Dutch experience was how much of it is predicated on those access to testing sites, so that people can, so that you're being a valuable partner when it comes to testing and commercialization. And it's really one of the, without that, you really can't have a full innovation ecosystem. And I'm really excited to hear about all of that. And Shannon, I don't mean to make you the bearer of bad news, but Shannon, you've got a lot of firms that very young firms that are coming through your program at Entrepreneurship at UBC. I was at the showcase a few weeks ago, and there really are some just amazing firms coming through there. Working with so many of them, what do you see as sort of one of the common challenges when it comes to developing and commercializing water tech in our region?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an entrepreneurship program at University of British Columbia, and I lead the Climate Venture Studios. So all the sustainability projects are in my portfolio. And so we're working, as Gregory said, with the very early stage companies just before incorporation. As they move through incorporating a startup company, these are all researchers, and usually for the next sort of 2 to 3 years. To get them launched. So some of the really common challenges, because part of the theme that we started been discussing is how do we actually solve industry problems? Well, I was formerly a professor of environmental science. One of the biggest barriers is researchers don't often have connections to industry. They don't have a personal network with industry. So then they go to do the customer discovery to actually confirm if there's a market opportunity. Often they have difficulty actually getting those conversations. And so that can take much longer than you might like, because you want to be able to tweak your technology as early as possible if it turns out that you're not solving a problem that anyone would pay for or cares about. And you need to sort of readjust that. So the timing is really important. So that's one piece. The second challenge that we have in Vancouver is that we live in a rainforest. And although we get droughts, although we have challenges with water, either flooding if there's too much water or wildfires, because we have water most of the time and it's inexpensive, although we have a tremendous number of startups and companies in Vancouver and in BC that focus on water, often this area is not the first market because the price is too low and the regulations, environmental regulations, don't create triggers for new markets. So the European Union often has much more progressive regulations, and that is sometimes the first market, or an area where there's water scarcity, Chile, California, any area that's suffering more drought, more of the year than we are, where they have a gaping neck wound. The other piece that's really challenging is for water technology, often the customer could be a municipality. And in a larger municipality like Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, Lillian and her group, they have buildings full of engineers. They have a mandate to do innovation, but in smaller communities, they might not even have. They may have one or no engineers on staff, and they have to rely on consulting engineers, and they cannot take on the financial risk to do an entirely new project that might fail. And so that's one of the big challenges we see is where can we get pilots for this technology? And the second piece, if you have a successful pilot, is there a pathway to actually getting procurement? Sometimes there are sort of strange rules that mean, for example, in First Nation communities, if you have a pilot and now actually are providing clean water to part of your population, your priority score to get funding for the final project has now been compromised because you've solved the problem halfway and your priority score has dropped. Now you can't get the funding. So there's a few of these sort of systemic barriers that exist, and we're trying to navigate through those. Thanks, Gregory.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's really I can't underscore enough that issue about the about people wanting water to be like if it's kind of done, then we don't have to pay attention to it. And you find that very often in clean tech generally, people are always much more about how do we solve the air quality problem, not the water problem, because that doesn't cost as much. It's not top of mind, and so that really is a challenge. If we look at companies that are a little further along in their development, and we shift to mangrove lithium, which started as water and now does much more than that. The Dutch, when they look at the Dutch experience, the water cluster involves academic, government, industry partnership, a whole lot of collaboration. And to me, it sure looks like mangrove lithium is a product of a similar mix. I mean, it emerged out of a lab at UBC. It's got government-backed partners, everything from Creative Destruction Lab to the National Research Council. There's ecosystem connections with Third Derivative, and you've got industry investors. And I'm sure that from the outside, it's very different on experience on the inside. Sad, what can you tell us about building an innovative technology company in our region? What's missing in our ecosystem? What would have made your journey easier as you were growing mangrove lithium?
Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to talk about this. I was smiling as Lillian was speaking because, as she mentioned, there's lab space available at Panellists Research Center. It isn't, because mangrove is taking all of it. So all of that Panellists Research Center is occupied by mangrove. That is a big need within the province. I think generally, we're clean tech companies are hard tech companies. They're developing gadgets. They're developing big projects. Sea container type projects are small. They are not the deployment that's going to happen. The deployment, they're a step to the deployment, and maybe on the TRL level, on the technology readiness level, there may be a 6 or 7. So something that's actually going to get deployed might be 10 times bigger in space. So space to test those, space to work on those kind of things, where you can have access to water, where you can have a place for hosting people. I think that is in really short supply. I think if we look at Metro Vancouver, just even the Analysis Research Center, as a company now, I think we're 33 or 34 people. Half of our team is at UBC, the other half is at Analysis Research Center, and we don't have any space to put anymore. And so that is a bottleneck, and especially for hard tech climate companies. The second part of that, I think what else is missing, anywhere you're working with universities and industries having partnership, IP transfer and IP negotiations is a very big part of it. I'm sure Shannon is very much aware of this, especially with publicly funded universities. It's taxpayer funds that are going towards developing technologies, and it's slow to get those IP agreements negotiated. I think I think I hold the record with the negotiation for UBC. It was 2.5 years. So that's just because I'm a very stubborn person. It doesn't reflect anything on anybody else. But that can be a barrier. Having a properly negotiated IP agreement, which is assignment or licensing, is quite important because it will affect whether the company gets funded later or not. Investors are going to look at that, and they are going to decide whether this is a company that's worth funding in, or they're going to have an overhanging IP. That could be quite problematic. From the view of the company, we shouldn't be in a position where we're actively thinking about circumventing our IP or thinking about how best to do that. It becomes a barrier. It becomes a barrier in innovation. It becomes a barrier in actually commercializing something. And so things have to be better there and smoother there. Certainly, I think that's a bigger philosophical discussion, so we won't go into that. So those are 2 things I think are quite important. Specific to mangrove, and I don't know about the Netherlands, everybody knows it's expensive to live here. You're looking at areas like Calgary, where a lot of engineering happens. You're looking at people getting paid more, but having lower cost of living, and that makes it very difficult to attract talent to Vancouver, especially when it comes to clean tech or hard tech companies. And so, I think what can we do to, one, improve that or allow or make it easier to attract talent in Vancouver, where you're going to be developing technology, or wherever the cluster is, wherever we can help with that, that can be important. Because at the end of the day, we're not a remote company. We need people to actually run the systems. We have things that are physical, and so that becomes a barrier if you can't grow fast enough, or you can't get those people to do those. Because at the end of the day, it is going to be people that are going to commercialize the technology, and list of investment criteria, the top thing is always people. So those are some 3 things that I think there's a lot here. Those are 3 things that I think can be improved. We've definitely benefited, and our journey has been good because of the infrastructure here. But those are things that we can improve.
Okay, thank you. I'm always struck when talking about this sort of thing, the extent to which this is not a water exclusive problem, or even a clean tech exclusive problem, whether it's the larger scale demonstration and testing facilities, or how do we attract that talent from outside the region to make sure that we can grow. we hear that in people in the medical, whether it's in medical devices or in hydrogen or you name it. If it's a high-tech related sector that we have here, even with the IP transfer problem that you're talking about. And that actually gives me optimism, because given that it isn't just like, oh, it's not just this niche thing. It's like, if we want to grow our technology sector broadly, we're going to need to address this. And with that, I'm going to throw it over to David to talk about maybe how we work on fixing this in terms of building an ecosystem here. Developing a cluster was a central theme for the Dutch experience. And so it's encouraging to see that Pacific Can is also focused and very interested in cluster building. And so David, you could tell us a little bit about how that fits into your decision to fund Foresight's BC Net Zero Innovation Network and clean technology more broadly.
Yeah, so thanks again, and thank you to our colleagues in the Netherlands. And petit bonjour et bon après-midi aussi. So, why did Pacific Can fundamentally look at water, or, the clean technology landscape, but specifically water? And I think the basic answer is because we like water as Canadians. We are a nation on 3 oceans, right? Atlantic, of course, connected to Europe, Arctic, and of course here on the west coast of Canada in British Columbia in the Pacific. But each province also has a life with water inside each province, right? And so we instinctively, like the province of Freeland, we really understand water. But then also there's a policy imperative here, right? And the government of Canada has a responsibility to try to do something. And on one hand, it's sustainability for sure and climate change. And on the other hand, it's to try to take existing ingredients that we have and mix them into future success, right? In terms of jobs, more research for sure, solutions, social cohesion, a number of things that all come together when we can thread something together. And we actually felt that a cluster approach is the best for clean tech and for water, right? In particular. So we have tool sets that are at the macroeconomic level. We have tool sets that are perhaps at the sector level. We have tools that are microeconomic, like direct support to mangrove. And somewhere between these is the cluster level. And I think our colleagues in the Netherlands have already just given us a masterclass, right, on why this all needs to come together. Because clusters are inherently, they're multidisciplinary. They offer a chance to give platform that allows partnerships with international partners. But they also allow for kind of real problems to find a place to be solved in practical and tangible ways, right? At the commercial level, but also the research level. So that's the basic reason why. And then from there, it was just simply a question of, could we be, as a government ministry, could we be catalytic somehow? And we saw that by doing support to the Net Zero Innovation Network, of which water will be one component. That was one way to definitely do it. We're doing other things for sure, because we would like to have different irons in the fire, but we definitely felt that made a lot of sense. And a lot of it came down to, at the end of the day, are there people who care? And are there people who are going to try to drive this forward? And when I say people, I mean researchers, entrepreneurs, enablers like Foresight, and partners. And so that's why, there was a number of things that there, probably a unique moment in time, but hopefully by having support, it will continue to be, right? So I'll keep my answer sort of short to that, and in case we have more questions, Greg.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It is exciting to see what the potential here for building a cluster is, although one of the things that I take away from Leeuwarden with a bit of chagrin is that what's really required here, in addition to getting everybody on the same page, is a hefty dose of patience, that this isn't the sort of thing you can just build overnight. I was surprised when researching Leeuwarden originally that there, as recently as 2016, an academic article suggesting that this was a colossal waste of time and an inefficient investment and the rest of it. And yet you look at it today and it's an acknowledged leader and a terrific model for us. We have a question from the audience asking about the creation and launch of the Canadian Water Agency. And does that create a new or different opportunity for boosting technology innovation in the water sector in Canada, along the lines of the government support that we're seeing in the Netherlands? Anybody on our panel would like to jump in on that? less familiarity amongst our panel about the yeah, that tells you something about just how new that launch is. Given the hesitance of the panel, I'll just say that I think that there's definitely an opportunity anytime we see the federal government involved in things. That's wonderful. Of course, figuring out how to connect the dots to get that into our region is going to be an obvious challenge.
I might just say a few quick things here, and that is, sure. You know, I think the government of Canada has been quite willing to experiment a little bit over the last while, right, in terms of how we go about implementing public policy. You'll have seen that through the superclusters experiment, right, in which we created 5 superclusters. Today, they're called global innovation clusters. You'll have heard about the sort of the recasting of some of our R&D areas into the new Canadian Innovation Corporation. So that is yet to come. So this is kind of part of that. You know, we're trying to rejig. We're trying to look at the landscape, and we're also trying to figure out, you know, in Canada, we have the saying, right? We need to skate to where the puck is, you know, in terms of a hockey reference, right? And so in trying to do that, we realized that, yeah, there has probably come a time and place for us to be a little bit more specialized in certain things. And so we'll try, you know, we'll give it a shot. And, you know, if it doesn't work, then we'll pivot, but we need to give this a shot. So that's a little bit of the background context.
Terrific. Another question here. How are we, okay, so just going to paraphrase a little bit here. In our region, we seem to see a lot of startups emerging from the universities. One of the things that was interesting from the Dutch panel was, what are we doing to connect academic researchers and existing firms to come together to solve a problem like we saw with Wetsus?
I can address that a little bit. So as I stated before, there's a real challenge in startups actually doing customer discovery. And this event is part of a series that Entrepreneurship at UBC and the Climate Venture Studio and Foresight launched, Climate Connections, to try to connect people from industry to do reverse pitches so that researchers and early stage entrepreneurs can do some customer discovery and start building that network. Now, we do see that with larger organizations, larger industrial partners, they usually approach the university, and we have a whole department for innovation partnerships that helps build up those partnerships. So usually, and they have the funding also to be able to come to pay for the PhD students and to rent laboratory space and do these various things. But it's the smaller firms that it's a little bit more hesitant, or doing this matchmaking between startups and larger firms where there's sort of that gap. And so part of it is to raise awareness that this is an opportunity and it can be very favorable. And so we like to tell different case studies about what have been successful collaborations, and just raise the awareness about this is an opportunity where you can match a more established company with some more innovative thinking, and that can be very collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. I think that you hit on it with the raising awareness that I think a lot of people are simple. As with many things in our water cluster here, or nascent water cluster, if you will, is that I look around and we have these pieces, but I think a lot of people are unaware of their existence and how many. And I would be remiss, given our partnership with Foresight, if I didn't mention that one of the things that they do quite well is that matchmaking aspect for some of those smaller firms trying to find other partners. I have a question here about whether AI is being utilized in water technology to enhance efficiency and address sustainability challenges.
I can comment on that. I can't won't comment on it from a mangrove perspective. But the short answer is yes. There's a couple of years ago, I think a company called Sonata got sold. But that was through a friend of mine who had developed a software which was able to look at membrane degradation of RO plants and recommend the maintenance schedule based on using an AI technology. And he came from an RO point. So his name is Mike Dixon. I'm based out of Calgary. He was previously with WaterNext as well, and they were, they succeeded in implementing that software solution into it. And improving membrane life, or improving the efficiency and energy consumption of RO plants by I think about 10 to 15%, which if you're thinking about RO in general, it's very close to its theoretical limit, where improvements in RO technology are quite incremental now, which was coincidentally how mangrove got started. But yeah, so I think, you know, that those things are happening, but they're going to take some time to be fully implemented.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add to that. I was at WEFTech, the largest wastewater conference last year, and there's a sort of innovation space, and I'd say half the companies showcasing their products there were AI related. It's definitely a part of probably 3 or 4 of our Sustainability Innovation Fund projects. So I'd say it's being used in every way. Whether you call it AI, machine learning, digital twins, you know, there are lots of ways that it's definitely emerging or already here in the wastewater sector.
I would say that if anybody has large data sets, water utilities are going to be right up there at the top. We've got a couple of moments left, and so I think it's appropriate. We've got a question that I think sums this up beautifully as a way to leave, and that is, what can we do in a challenging political landscape to make sure that initiatives get long-term support, given that building a cluster is in fact a long-term process and not something you can just flip a switch on?
What I'm going to suggest is having a body that is funded by government but external and independent, similar to what we have with the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, where it's got its own endowment. It's not at the whim of the latest political changes. That could be a model very similar to the historic water boards in the Netherlands. I mean, when you have a country that has drainage and polders, that only sustains over 400 years if you have a stable water board that can manage that, despite revolutions, despite wars, despite various things going on. So you need to have something that has a financial endowment, but is not swayed by the politics of the day. That would be my recommendation.
I see David nodding, and perhaps we can encourage.
Yeah, I totally agree. As a nonpartisan public servant, I mean, we love for stability on the political side. So 100% agree. What I would say also is, and I'll take this opportunity to just continue to invite partnerships, you know, across the Atlantic with our Dutch colleagues, you know, as we need to show results together. And some of that is sort of in the hearts and minds of people, right? And so, you know, so the other day, you know, with Consul General Messerschmidt, you know, we were hearing from Eilish Campbell, who is Canadian ambassador to the EU, and she was very clear about the need for like-minded countries like Canada and the Netherlands to work together on third-party things, because we share ethos, you know, we dream similarly, we care about the same things, and we have the same good reputation. So if we can go to market together, right, or we can make true, you know, scientific breakthroughs together, then we can show, and it becomes therefore much easier for governments to come behind and fund things and support things. We have our internal feelings about things, but at the end of the day, we serve the people. So the people have to agree with that, right? So we need everyone's help to make sure that, you know, respective electorates continue to see the value of these things.
And that water stops being something we take for granted and something we start focusing on as part of the broader climate preparedness, resilience, and solutions. With that, I want to thank everybody who has participated in our panel. Thank you so much for making this an enjoyable experience. I hope everybody else shares some of my excitement about the prospects for developing a water cluster here in our region. And with that, I'm going to throw it back to Nina.
Thank you so much, Gregory, and thank you everyone for joining today. It's very interesting to hear from the Dutch experience how far can collaboration actually take us and what it means to a region when you work on a cluster and all the stakeholders come together. And we see that in BC we really have good opportunities. We're there, we have the willingness for collaboration. What we need to work on now is infrastructure. We need to change the narrative around water, regulations, and bring the stakeholders together, close the gap between industry and other stakeholders. And we think there's the willingness and the excitement. For sure, it's on our side. It's part of our vision of the BCNs in water cluster. So we're looking forward to work with our partners on this call, stakeholders on this call, to work towards a water cluster. And here on the slides, you see how to contact us. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. If you want to be connected to one of the panelists, please let us know if you have any further questions. And we just want to highlight that this is only the beginning of this collaboration. As Alan said in the beginning, we want to continue this exchange with the Netherlands. We're hoping to bring some Dutch delegations to Vancouver next year, some BC delegations to the Netherlands. And with that, I wish you all a beautiful weekend and thank you for joining us. Thank you.